Hey guys, thanks for joining me. Today we have a special treat. We're joined by Matt, the current #1 Shine-On seller with a bunch of records at Shine-On in terms of sales. Thank you for joining me, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so we were just kind of jiving off camera or whatever before we hit record, and there was so much like good stuff going on that now we're gonna have to say it twice. But I can't wait to kind of hear your e-commerce story again.
Sure.
And if it's possible, like, do you want to just kind of start at the beginning and kind of give us the story, like how you found out about print on demand, Shine On, whatever it is that we need to know that maybe is kind of relatable to those of us that are kind of maybe beginners, and then
Yeah.
kind of tell us how you scaled?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've really been active online in some capacity since like I think 2010 when like niche sites were super popular. They had like the exact match domains and those kinds of things. And I was a I was still working the corporate job then. I'm an accountant by trade, so I was a full-time accountant, but building these like little niche sites and trying to rank them and then getting like affiliate commissions was kind of like the play at that time. And you'd work for like 6 months to a year to get something to rank, and then it would kind of trickle in some money, and it was okay. And but then it seemed like every time you got something going, there'd be like some kind of Google update, and you have like 6 sites that would get slapped, and you'd go from like making $1,000 a month to zero, and you had to start kind of all over again. And it was just kind of frustrating. And I did that for a while, and then about like 2014, I started seeing like T-shirts pop up. This is like Teespring days when like the name shirts were really popular. They'd call you out in the feed and be like, "It's a BA thing," you wouldn't understand or whatever. And I'm like, "How are they doing that? That's so awesome!" And really kind of thought that maybe that's something I could try, and looked into it a little bit just on free videos, and realized that there was a Facebook ad platform that that you could use. And so launched my first ads. I think I spent $50, didn't make anything. I was like, man, this is a scam. This is like the biggest scam.
And did they feel expensive back then? Just for perspective, like, didn't they feel expensive even back then?
I mean, it was so clunky. Like I have screenshots from back then. Like, yeah, they felt expensive. They felt like, so now I would say people say that it's more expensive to run them, but they're so much more sophisticated now. Like the reason why people would say it's more competitive is because they just made it so much easier to actually do it. Back then, like it was really like just a grind just to get something launched and tracked. And it was pretty tough. And coming in it from like a beginner's mindset, I had no idea what I was doing. Like I just thought like you just hit click and magically money popped out, right? I didn't know about testing or anything like that. And I kind of like set it to the side. I was like, nah, it's not for me. I'm gonna go back to making my like niche sites and whatever. And but then like in 2015, I had, as you get like in a certain group of people that kind of speak this like POD language, you start to see some of your friends that started with you having success, right? And you're like, what the hell? I mean, if they can do it, I should be able to do it, right? And so I got into it really heavy in like June of that year. And back then you used to have to like tip your campaign. So your like campaign wouldn't print unless you sold like X amount. I think it was like 10 at some point. They lowered it to 10. And so, but I think initially it might have been like 50. But when I tipped my first campaign, man, then I was hooked. I'm like, I got this. I can do this. And went on with that, did quite well. I mean, at the time I thought it was huge, huge money making, like, selling like 2,000 shirts or whatever, and of like a certain design. And, it was, at the time, it was like a side hustle. It was more for me to like, do the extras with my family. I didn't have kids, but just to kind of like go on vacations or buy something nice for myself or my wife, kind of just the extra money. It wasn't really like
Yep.
a goal or even like on the radar that this could be something that would take away the corporate job. Right. And so that's kind of where I started. And then I don't know if you want me to keep going as far as like progression. It kind of,
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna ask, like, I guess I had a few questions, but I was gonna say, when you were an accountant, did it drive you crazy at all? Just like, that was the first thing that popped in my mind, because I know people who aren't accountants, they do this print on demand thing, and they're like, it's like that, I don't know, like a meme or something with numbers flying around the screen,
yeah.
in their head.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I guess going back to when I was like first really introduced to like business, my dad gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad, like way back when. And I think it was the first book I ever read that wasn't like assigned to me in terms of like, like Homer's The Iliad or something in school, or like, Catcher in the Rye. It was like the first book that I wanted to read. And I read it, and, I kind of thought, hey, now I'm going to start making coins in my front yard, just like he did, even though he said, don't do it. That's not the way to make money. But, long story short, it kind of like gave me like a little bit of a whisper of like this world that existed outside of like the 9 to 5. And then he gave me, The Richest Man in Babylon, which was like a lot of money principles that have been echoed by everybody from like Tony Robbins to all the gurus out there, kind of like echo the same kind of like principles that this book talked about. But going back to the Rich Dad Poor Dad, I started to feel like, okay, maybe I want to do business. I need to learn business. About that time, like 4-Hour Workweek came around too. So like I started to really, get interested in this kind of stuff.
And I'm taking notes for anybody watching. I'll put these in the description.
Yeah, and the 4-Hour Workweek was Tim Ferriss. It was really,
I know.
people forget about him, but like he was kind of like the connector between like the direct response marketing and like the online world. Like he was kind of the bridge between those two worlds. Like even when he came up with the book 4-Hour Workweek, I think it was first called Drug Dealing for Fun and Profit. Because he thought it was quirky. He's kind of like a tongue-in-cheek guy. And then, but then what he did was PPC testing on Google, different titles, and 4-Hour Workweek won. And it's probably, like basically haunted him ever since, because, the first question they ask on like a news story is, do you really only work 4 hours? Right. Which was not the point of the book at all. But yeah, so like that, those 3 books really said, I want to learn the language of business. I'm going to be an accountant, right? And so that's kind of going back to your question. I went into accounting and just was going to do it just to learn the language of business. I still wanted to be the entrepreneur, but then like basically once you get in that corporate gig, salary is nice. It's hard to say no. At the time, I thought it was a nice salary, and I basically like blinked and it was like 10 years later. It's kind of like, it's crazy. It was always kind of like that little like whisper in the back of my mind that this is not what you want to do. The frustration was there, but the money was good, so it was really tough.
That's how I felt too, man. I can relate to that. But I don't want to make this about me. Your story's great. Do you want to pick back up where you were, or just kind of tell us like kind of the bridge into what made you kind of really like accelerate?
Yep. So I was really big into shirts for a long time. And like I say, every time I've ever had a big jump start, somebody else has inspired me. That's like where, people kind of dog on people that share success. I know I don't really get a lot of hate personally, but I know people that like do. But I've always been really inspired by people. And I think that's probably the way it goes. The people that have that optimistic outlook are inspired by people that do well. And the people that are kind of at that lacking kind of a mindset feel attacked and feel like they're being put down by somebody else succeeding and not them. But I was always inspired.
Great
so
point. Sorry to cut you off, bro. That was a great point, man. I love that.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, and I have friends that did well. I mean, I was blessed to be around people that were positive. When things didn't work out, we looked for solutions, not blame. And I saw people doing really well in mugs, and they were selling a lot of funny mugs, like simple mugs. And so I dove into that, and I sold like multiple 7 figures in mugs, kind of like based on the same principles that I learned with shirts, I was now, doing in mugs. I actually I bought some lake property with mug money, basically. Like coincidentally, I that's kind of my first like thought, like the money that you earn from like this online stuff doesn't have to stay online. You can take it offline and put it in different assets. And so I bought some land in like 2019, I want to say. That's like more than doubled in like value, just because, I put some mug money on like the side just to have for like this rainy day. Not to mention you can use the land, right?
Love that.
And that was Facebook ads. Mugs don't have a great margin. I've still really been, I'm still heavy focused in like Facebook ads. But I started to see like jewelry items pop up around this time, and it's like not really all that early. But initially they were just selling, like we'd have to like make a design like in CAD or whatever and send it to them, and then they'd create some like personalized jewelry item for you. They basically transition around this time to more of standard jewelry offering, but then they would have like a message card behind it, message card jewelry. This is when I first kind of started to see this in like the print on demand space. And I was doing the math and I'm like, I sold so many units, but my like margin per unit is like $4, right? At the end of the day, my net. That's the accountant hat coming back. And what if this was like jewelry? Because they're selling these for like, I sold a mug for like $23, or like a shirt even. They're selling these jewelry items for like $60.
Oh, they got the juiced margins, man. Yeah.
Like,
I never got big into jewelry, but those margins always like, I was like, damn, I need to be in jewelry.
Right. And that's what I was thinking. So I tried it myself. Didn't work out. The problem I had was that what I'd done with shirts worked on mugs. And I'm going to be honest with you, like it's ridiculous because all this stuff kind of compounds. So like, it's not like you start from zero. Like you're learning these principles that apply to multiple methods. And so I took the principles from shirts, put them to mugs. I swear it was like my third mug design was like a multi 7-figure seller. Like it was like ridiculous, right? And so, and I still sell it to this day, actually. And when I went and kind of played around like in the jewelry pool, I thought that same kind of principle would work, and it didn't. It flopped. I tried to be funny. I tried to be quirky, tried to do it to current events. It didn't work. And what I had to learn is that it's a different kind of buyer that buys for different kinds of reasons when they buy jewelry items. It's more sentimental. It's more, we have a saying that's if they cry, they buy. And so that's kind of where I had to like reset myself, humble myself, right? Multiple 7-figure seller and multiple products, and built a couple businesses out of it and like brands, and kind of focus more on like relearning, coming in like with the mind of a student. And so that's what I really focused on. I realized that I had to find a coach. I had multiple coaches throughout that time when I was learning with the shirts and everything like that. But then I ended up in like 2020, everything, the world changed. And that was like, when 2020 happened, that was like my wake up call. Like they were asking us to like do certain things I didn't agree with. We were working remotely. It didn't make sense. It made me feel like just kind of displayed how little control I had over my life. Right. And I think it was the push I needed to realize that maybe I need to focus on this online thing more and get like, maybe it could be something that would maybe help me leave that corporate world and have more control. And so
can I ask real quick? Like this is after you've already hit like multi 7-figure sales,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. And I mean, like I wasn't great with my money. I wasn't like buying like Lambos, obviously. It wasn't that kind of money, but I was buying like nice stuff. I pay for vacations and things like that. Or ultimately, my daughter was born really early. She was born 15 weeks early, so she was they call her a micro preemie. And so she was in the hospital for 144 days and on like oxygen and everything like that. She came home on oxygen too. And so like during that time is when I was trying to make like this like a different physical products business work. And I was in the hole bad. I think and at one point I was probably like $40,000 on my Amex that I was like, I owed and had no way to pay. And like legitimately, I feel like a lot of people that have any kind of success have these stories. Like I can tell you right now, they're not marketing like floof. Like this stuff happens. This is the risk of it all. But the thing is that the upside is so huge. It's worth going through some of these things, and you learn so much about yourself during it. And I like legitimately was outside of the hospital, like trying to negotiate with Amex when my daughter is inside the hospital, like trying to get them to not like take me to court or like come after me with collections, and like basically ended up working out with them and didn't do any kind of bankruptcy. I talked to a few good friends in the industry that gave me great advice about focus, and I ended up paying back every penny. And now I had this little baby where like my commitment to it, this would be 2017 going into 18. This is like where like my big push to those mugs happened, was from her, like really saying, I got to do something with my life and be something more for her. And so like, that was kind of like the dark night of the soul for me. But sorry, I had to like regress just because it was like a why that's so important to me. And like to this day, still, when things go hard, like I just think about her so much and how much that like she struggled in like the NICU, and watching her fight for life and watching all the babies fight for life every day. And I'm like, just kind of like reframe my whole perspective on like what a blessing it is to be here and to have like the struggles that we do, because, it's just a game at the end of the day. So yeah, 2020. Sorry, I got off on topic there.
No, dude, don't apologize. Like I'm
kind of emotional even thinking about it.
Dude, the story I think resonates. Oh, I mean, I don't know if we can relate, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's your why. And that's something that everybody has to find, is like, what's motivating them. Like, I don't even know really what mine is, man. You said it's a game, and I'm kind of like, dude, I just grew up addicted to gaming.
Yeah.
And like, I just transitioned from those online games that don't reward me in any way to like the money game, you know what I mean? And just always having that drive inside me to want to win,
Yeah, that's great. I would say 2020, like I was talking about how everything happened, the world turned or changed in 2020, right? So I signed up for a course. It taught me a lot of the basics about the jewelry business. There was a guy in there that did who actually works for the main supplier that I use now. Now he's CEO. At the time he was just like a regular seller. And he had like a $92,000 day. Like he sold $92,000 of jewelry in one day. And I was like, holy smokes, that's like my salary, right? Like that would be awesome. And so I took his course and I learned a ton. And I started having like a little bit of success. I wasn't like striking out completely every time. I was starting to get wins and, small, like little products that would do like, 5 figures. I think I got, and then I took a couple more courses, like just small courses. And I think in like January of 2021, I had my first 10K month, or February of 2021, I did 10K profit. And I was like, wow, there really is something here. And so I got involved in a coaching group of a guy that I found in like the Shine. It's called Shine On is the company that I sell primarily. And they have a group, and there was a coach in there that was showing these like insane Mother's Day screenshots. And I was like, I got to just bite the bullet. I go, I'm trying, I'm getting whispers of like success. I just don't want to quit. But I know that, if I get in the right room, I can get fast tracked on this stuff. And so I ended up signing up for coaching. It was a stretch for me. That would have been in June of like 2021. I ended up like, this is where I really had like the biggest like adjustment to coming from t-shirts and mugs to now jewelry, was just working in this group and with this coach. And I ended up doing $500,000 in sales my first Q4 selling after I joined this program. So I joined in June, did $500,000 in Q4, and most of that was in December. And then that was like where I was like, holy shit, like this could like change my life. and it made me a real believer, right?
Can I ask, like, if it's okay?
Yeah.
Like, what is it like having success? Like, I know it didn't happen overnight, but like, is there any like sprinkles you could give us of like, oh crap, the credit card bill needs to be paid instantly so it can refresh today, or like needing to immediately hire like 5 people just to run customer service, or any like, quick touches you could do on those?
I mean, I think this is like the best part about this is that like, about print on demand, you don't really have to have a lot of that, in my opinion, until you get a little bit bigger. So I wasn't dealing with a ton of it. Cash flow is always an issue at every level, especially as you grow. So I'm not Dave Ramsey. I do a lot on credit, and I love credit. I love, like, if you start out in this game, you're going to do paid ads. I mean, Amex is your friend, right? Like you can pay for first class tickets the rest of your life if you use your Amex to buy like ads with. And so was like blessed enough to like to get one of those cards early, and then I just kind of used it. But initially, my first credit card had a $500 limit. And that's like, it was a personal credit card. And like, man, there were some times, like, especially like in the shirt days and the mug days, where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this payment, like trying to like not wanting to like turn off your ads, because all the gurus say if you do that, like the pixel will die and then the ad account will catch on fire. And I'm like, these ads can't turn off. I got to figure out a way to do it. And but I do remember one instance when I realized things had kind of gotten to the next level. My wife, I was like, it was Friday, right? And the worst part of like cash flow is when you're selling stuff, especially on Shopify, you could make sales from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they just sit in your Shopify account, and you don't get paid for them. Usually it's like Monday or Tuesday, but you have to keep on running ads during the weekend. And if you're scaling, cash flow becomes really tight. And I said, I think I might need to borrow some money from us just to make the gap. And she's like, well, how much do you need? I'm like, I don't know, like 10,000. She's like, what? And I'm like, why is that too much? Like, it's kind of like, kind of how you said, like at a certain point, it doesn't even become money anymore. It's like POD points or something. It's so weird. I can't even describe it.
Are you like me? Like, I think it's almost better. And I got this mindset from really like deep diving since 2020 into learning about the financial markets, you know what I mean? And like, investing, but also trading, you know what I mean? And it's like, if you think of it like money,
right,
I think it almost like is counterproductive in your
Yes.
decision-making process.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like the casino, right? The casino gives you chips because they don't want you to see it as money. So like, they're like basically feeding that whole like separation for you. And it's like, it almost comes that way to me. Like it takes out the emotionality. And it's just like, I don't know, it's really weird. And then when the numbers get bigger, it gets even weirder. Like, because then it's like, there's even more of a separation. Like you'd have conversation with people that aren't in the business that look at you like you're lying or like you're insane. Right. But like, it just doesn't feel the same way. Right. It's totally goofy. So I guess I had 2 big crisis moments of money up until then. The $500 bill that I couldn't pay, and then the $40,000 Amex bill that was out there that I couldn't pay at the time. But took care of them both. Two small dark nights of the soul. The 40,000 was hard, man. Like that's when I realized like my wife believed in me, like she was in my corner. Cause it was so weird. I go, I owe so much money. She's like, how much? I go, like at the time it was probably like almost what I made in a year. Right. I'm like, I go, I owe like $50,000. And she actually said, do you owe like 40? I'm like, yeah. Like, I don't even know how she know. Cause like how she knew. She had no like access to the account. She's like, well, you'll figure it out. We'll be okay. We're going to make it. And then it's like that was like the first time where like, I'm always like the entrepreneur, like telling her my dreams. I'm going to be a millionaire, right? And like at a certain point, you're telling them year after year, you start to think they're going to just call like BS on you, right? Like you're just a dreamer. You're never going to actually make it happen. So like to be like at least that far in and still have her in my corner and still believe in me, it was like huge for me. And it was really eye-opening for me. So yeah, get yourself the right woman. It helps.
Love that. Yeah. My wife now, dude, we got married this year, a couple months ago, but it's like, she always reminds me that she was with me when I was if you're familiar with Amazon merch, like a print on demand Amazon program. She's like, I was with you when you were in tier 10, when you would make like $5 a month or something. You know what I mean? She's like, I was with you then.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so, we were talking about the coaching and the first $500,000, I guess. So yeah, the guy's name is Mario, was the guy that I joined, Mario Menduni. And so at that point, like he kind of like invited me in to be a coach actually, because I was one of the more successful students. And then I started actually coaching in the group, doing like coaching calls on the side, but still kind of growing the business. And one of the things that happened was, and I'm sorry to keep on like regressing. The story goes in weird ways.
You're good.
It's been so long. I was very like niche focused when I first came into it. So like think like motorcycles, right? Like very like niche. You have to sell people that like motorcycles and jewelry. It totally hamstrings you from like a broader market. You can do a lot of six-figure products in those kinds of things, probably. But you're not going to do a lot of seven figures and definitely not eight going into like a market that small. So one of the things that I did is I totally rebranded in 2021, going into that Q4, and started a brand from scratch. It's kind of funny because it was actually like an older brand that I had set aside that I just kind of like breathed life back into. Because I did the whole like drop ship from China thing and all that. So I did skip a lot of things, like a lot of steps in there. But ultimately, print on demand was a much more long-term business model than some of the drop ship stuff. And so, yeah, I basically, I started coaching, and my goal for 2022 was to do like $1 million. And this is kind of when I did the $500,000, this is when I absolutely believed that if I grew it big enough, it could be like a job quitter, right? I could leave the corporate world behind. Was fortunate enough that in June of 2022, so like absolutely like a year from when I joined the program and started selling, like going back to like January of that year, I committed. I said, I'm not doing any kind of any more coaching, no affiliate stuff, no like Amazon stuff, nothing. I'm focusing on paid traffic, and Shine-On's my supplier. All I'm doing is this for a year. If I give it a go for a year and it doesn't work out, I'm going to reassess. But I kept on getting so distracted, like everybody else does, right? Shiny object opportunity that might go away, AI, all these like little like tokens people are selling and all this stuff. And I just went all in. And so, yeah, being able to
Thank you for sharing that, by the way. I know people, like somebody watching needed to hear that. So I appreciate that. And I mean, yeah, like, dude, I'm guilty of doing too many things at once too. I think everybody is. So that's great to just for perspective for you to say.
I still do, but I'm better at like reeling it in now and like recognizing it. And I'm like, okay, there's sometimes you kind of have to explore 20% of the time, because especially as your business grows, it becomes like a leverage point where like, if I can just like, when I have like $1,000 a year business, if I can increase it by 10% with this little like bit of knowledge that I don't know, it's not a huge like move. But if I have a 7-figure business or 8-figure business and I increase it by 10%, that's huge. So you kind of want to be open to like new knowledge, but not let it take you off your main focus. And that's kind of a delicate balance to strike, really, especially for most entrepreneurs have a certain type of personality that like to build things and create and start new things. But working in the things we create is tough sometimes.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like you can't let the small potatoes hold up the big potatoes. Is a good way, I guess,
exactly.
the relative aspect.
Yeah. And so I ended up quitting my corporate job in June of 2022 and going like full-time e-commerce finally. So it was like a goal I had. I mean, ultimately the path started a dozen years earlier, but really got focused. Once I got focused on the one thing, it only took like a year, which is kind of crazy to think about it. Like, I feel like I might have been able to do it. I know I could, and I know now I could probably do it a lot quicker just because I know the power of focus. But yeah, I guess it was my like journey. And a lot of times it feels like, you remember the movie, what was it? Slumdog Millionaire, when he lives this whole life. He's not taught any kind of like traditional sense, but he goes on that like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire show. And he knows all this knowledge from like his past life, like just being like alive. That's kind of what it like feels like now. Like I've been selling print on demand and been in this online space so long that like things that I learned way back when that I never really thought I'd have a use for now come forward and like benefit me. And like, it's like the bad coaches that I had taught me something. The okay coaches that I had taught me stuff, and so it's like it kind of like builds up this like momentum of its own that just kind of like hockey sticks you, right? It's like moment of like, I don't know what they'd call it, but just a moment of like
full circle.
Really. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so yeah, I ended up a year after quitting my job, and when you're, I don't know if your audience mostly probably like working for a living and not like in full-time e-commerce, or
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah. So like when you're working part-time, like that was the thing too. Like up until then I had a kid. I had 2 or 3 hours at night to like grind. That's like, I had to be super focused that year. And that's part of the reason why being focused is required, is because if you're only giving yourself 3 hours a night after your regular gig, or 4 hours a night, like you can't be spread out among too many things. You just don't have that like velocity. You're not going to hit that velocity you need to escape. So you got to focus those few hours that you have on one thing. And so like that was like my huge motivator for so long, was quitting this corporate job. I hate this corporate job. And eventually, that goes away, right? Eventually you quit your job and that big motivation's gone. And then I was like, man, am I going to just like sit around and eat bonbons? Am I going to become lazy now or whatever? And, it was the opposite. Like I was so scared that I was going to have to go back to all these people. Like, when I put in my notice and they're like, are you going to a different firm? Can I ask? And I'm like, no, I'm going to go sell jewelry online. Right. Like, and they look at you like you just told them that you got divorced. You're like, oh, well, that's nice. Like, And so I was like, I can't go back. Now that I can do it full time, I got to prove to myself that I can, make this work on like a different level. And, 2021 I did 500,000. 2022 I did a million. I did hit that goal that I set for myself of $1 million. And then in 2023 we did 7.5 million, which is like the first year of like being like full time. So it was like 2022 and basically did like $1 million that year, and then 2023 we did 7.5. I actually skipped a step there, but yeah. So 2023 we did 7.5 from $1 million the year before, and that was the first year that I was full-time e-commerce.
And how big was the Q4 in 2023, if you remember, like ballpark? Like, and again, was there any issues? I'm just, not to come back to it, but like financing like all this money in such a short span, I'm assuming it was probably huge. Was there anything that you learned there? Any hiccups?
Yeah, I would say, so to answer the first question, we did 6 million of a 7.5 roughly was in Q4. So it was a huge hockey stick growth, and everything that you can imagine happened. Like wheels fell off. Like I was on vacation. Like when I found out how I was watching the campaigns on my phone and operating them. And all of a sudden I'm like, holy crap. Like we keep raising the budgets and we're still profitable, and it just keeps on going and going. And at the time I had one poor person from the Philippines doing my customer support. And I had told them, I was like, I'm going to go on vacation. If things get too bad, just let me know and we can, bring some people in. But at the same time, I'm a practitioner, right? I'm a in the trenches guy. Something breaks, I'm going to fix it. Like not a CEO mindset of like finding the right person to fix it. Like I'm going to fix it. Well, he calls me or he texts me and says, yeah, we need help. Support's going crazy. I'm like, well, what's it look like? He's like, we have 750 tickets right now, open tickets. And we don't even have a software to like manage support, we have like Gmail. So it was like, I was like, holy crap. And I'm like in Florida, you know, on like this vacation. And so that was like a turning point. Like, whereas I had to figure out how to put my CEO hat and develop those skills really quickly because, I mean, if you want to talk about like fires that come up when you go from 7-figure to approaching 8-figure, like the fires intensify and you, you know, everything's like a domino effect, right? If you don't respond to customers, they think you're a scam. They start putting in chargebacks. You start getting chargebacks. You have issues with your payment processors, everything from PayPal to Shopify payments saying, why aren't you shipping your stuff? We're going to cut you off if your chargeback rate goes above too high. And then like, you know, everything like in terms of like managing, you know, it could be like something as simple as like, where's my order? Like even if you have it, it's all automated and it sends them tracking numbers. But like if they just write you and say, where's my order? And you don't respond, and like then suddenly they're going to put a chargeback in, right? It's like, even if the order is already shipped. And so like those kinds of things just like revealed themselves like very quickly. And it was very much a snowball effect. And so I didn't sleep for like, I don't even know, a month and a half really. Like it was one of those things where it was a combination of like just pure excitement and panic. Like, you know, cause it's just like, just so much money coming in daily that you're like, this is awesome. And then you're like, oh my God, like things are breaking. Like it was just like an oscillation between like euphoria and I think I'm having a heart attack like constantly.
That's awesome, man.
But yeah, it was an awesome run. And fortunately, trial by fire, I think I'm learning how to do the CEO role better. I actually found a book. I said I'd mention it. It's called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. I think it's an awesome book. Now, part of it is that it found me, talk about like the universe listening, right? It found me right when I needed it. And it simplified hiring so much for me that like, I don't even know if my business would have survived without it. And so I used that book like my Bible and developed the simple skills based on technology that I needed in order to like do what it says, buy back my time and give and like delegate, truly delegate, not have my hand in it, not like, you know, sometimes look in there, but actually delegate things. And like, that's been a lifesaver and a health saver too, probably.
Dude, I wrote that down, and that's definitely going to be like the next book I read, just because that's like I know my next step, man. I've been so bad about hiring and getting help, and like you said, in the trenches, and I'm able to because we don't have kids yet, but I know that's coming at some point, you know. So I need to be in position, you know, better position than I'm at now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not something that you learn. I mean, I think maybe if you're like a 20-something that's never really had a job, it's probably a little bit easier. But if you're like me, kind of like a dinosaur in the industry, like you've done a corporate job for 20 years or whatever, or 15, you get used to being that cog. It's really hard to step out of that like role that you're programmed to be.
Yeah. And I've always been a grinder, man. So that's like where my head is at. Like, and I want to be, you know, on top of everything. And I feel like also like with me being the face of this business, everybody watching on YouTube sees my, you know, my branding underneath this video. It's like, I feel responsible that I need to be doing it.
Yep.
In order to speak and not be, you know, I don't want to say a fraud because I get it. Like I've done it already, but you know what I mean? I'm still out here in these trenches, like grinding and speaking to my experience in my videos.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any web presence outside of like the coaching that I think you said you still do, right? And I think we said we'll plug to your social media and if anybody wants to reach out about that. You said it's high ticket though, right? So it's not like a
Yeah, it's more high ticket, but it's very white glove. So we have everybody from beginners to we have tons of 6 and 7-figure sellers in there, 8-figure even maybe. And then we have like beginners, people that start with us from like square one. We get them set up with the store. We do everything like optimized and take them from like 0 to hero basically. It's very much a fast track. So if anybody, obviously anybody can reach out to me about that. Or just to like follow along, really. That's kind of like where I was saying, it was like I got so focused on the business that like I was my intent was to like really track it and to like kind of like, you know, open like the door and like show like my progress from like corporate cog to like being like able to finally leave it. And once the business grew the way it did, it just became so all encompassing that I ended up like not really tracking much. And so it kind of took on like a life of its own.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, people ask because I for my first 5 years of my journey, and some of it was like a regression, but I would publish a monthly income report showing all of the different complementary income streams that I do.
Mhm.
And my complementary method, that's kind of what I call Ryan's method, is like the complementary things that I did to escape my 9 to 5, really. But people are like, why don't you do it anymore? I'm like, because you don't understand. It used to take 2 days of my time to get it
Yeah.
done. And then I
Yeah.
got it down to 1 day when I quit my job. But even then, it's like a full day out of a 30-day month. It's just like the
Yeah.
return wasn't high enough, you know?
Yeah. And things get so complicated. Like I know like my wife for years wanted me to do our taxes because I'm an accountant, but I'm like, I'm not anymore. I'm in like recovery, right? I'm not an accountant anymore. But like, you know, once you start complicating your life with business, like our taxes now are like 200 pages. I'm like, I don't want a full-time job doing our taxes. I mean, we got to pay the expert to do it now, right? It's like, you know, you're very much like, no, you roll up your sleeves and you do it yourself. It's like, no, no, no. And now I'm very much like, how much can I delegate? And that book like opened it up. Like, I want someone to do my laundry, my lawn, my cleaning, like everything. Just because
I
you
hear
start to
you.
like
You
value
figure
your
out what your
time.
time is worth, and then you're like, you'll be doing something else. And if it's not a passion, I'm like, well, I should just pay somebody to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm good at that outside the online business. But cool. We're coming up on the hour where we have to pivot to something else. I mean, dude, I'm sure there's so many questions that like people watching this want me to ask you.
Yeah.
Can you give like a quick summary of people watching? Like maybe if they're not on Shine On, I'll also put that link in the description. Like as a beginner,
Mhm.
can you speak to that mentality of like what they need? You've already kind of talked about like prioritizing and stuff, maybe in like a matter of fact, like action taking way.
Yeah. I would say like number one, like this is where I messed up. Like I had bad coaches, don't get me wrong, but I also take responsibility for all of it because in a lot of ways I didn't do my due diligence. I didn't vet them and I signed up thinking it was one thing when it wasn't, and I wasn't really clear ultimately on what I wanted to do. So like, you know, they say that like if a ship doesn't know where it wants to go, then any wind is favorable, right? I actually think the number one thing you have to do is like look around the marketplace. There's so many different opportunities, but first find out exactly what you want to do. So be very clear to yourself. What do you want to accomplish? And then find someone who can help you get there. Find someone who's already doing it. Like if you do those two steps, it's going to fast track your growth and keep you much more focused than like, I want to dabble in this, I want to dabble in that, because that's not going to get you that escape velocity that you need. And then for me, it was like simplification is so important. Like, you know, I don't share this often because it sometimes scares people away. But like when I tested the mugs, right? I tested, I think it was like 3 or 4 mugs, and like the 4th mug was the one that did 7 figures, right? When it came into jewelry, my 7-figure seller took me 137 tests to find. So I had 136, people would call them failures. But it's not to say that I had 136 designs that didn't sell anything, right? I had 136. There was a lot of sellers. There were some that sold hundreds, but a lot of times it was break even, slight margin. It was something I couldn't scale effectively with paid ads. Like the margin just wasn't there. But on 137, I scale it to the moon. So like being able to like develop a very simple process and just put in the grind. Like once you give them that like blueprint of, you know, how to test, then the people that win are just the ones that can, like, there's like a analogy in the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, and it talks about how he's successful because if he gave himself a task to walk across a bridge every day and throw a pebble off, he'd do it. Day 1, he'd throw the pebble. Day 2, he wouldn't say, well, today I'm not going to throw that pebble. Or he wouldn't say, why don't you just throw 50 pebbles and be done with it for the month? No, he'd be disciplined. He'd throw the 1 pebble every day. It's like if you can like manage that level of discipline, also be clear on what you want to do, and also have the person that's doing it help you get there. Like there's no way you won't win eventually.
Yeah. And man, hopefully that's resonating because I totally get it. I totally get what you mean. And I think that's where things get off the tracks for a lot of people. It's not even about like like the actual like action of, it's not about like that they're clicking the wrong thing on the screen, or you know what I mean? It's honestly a lot of times like you said, just kind of sitting down and putting yourself in a good place to succeed mentally and you know, whatever else it means, you know, and then just the follow through.
Yeah, absolutely. I love my what's the app called? I use Headspace. I use my Headspace app every day. Like it just to start. Like I do my little 10-minute meditation just to like, clear my head. It always feels like the world has so many like asks of you coming at you, and you know, for a long time, I didn't like meditation for what it wasn't. Like I thought it was like, you had to be like Buddhist or whatever, right? I didn't know what it was. But when I started getting into it, I just realized it's so much more about like controlling the inputs that come into your brain and just being able to like focus on things. And I swear, once I started doing that like little 10-minute meditation, like the free version, it just made me so much more impactful in my daily work.
No, I appreciate that, man. Anything else before we jump? This has been an incredible interview, and everybody, like, please check out Matt's social media. It's gonna be linked in the description. Also, I'm gonna drop a link to the YouTube cards to my interview with Eric, who was CEO of Shine On at the time. You said that now he's transitioned to a different role, but he's still there.
Yep.
That's a great complimentary interview. And anything else to leave us with?
I would just say, just believe that you can do it because you can. There's a lot people that are a lot dumber than you doing it. I'm one of them. You know, I'm nothing like special. I'm not like in Miami flashy. I'm like, you know, Minnesota guy from the woods that just like doesn't quit. And that's my superpower, I guess, at this point.
What's so funny, man, is that's like a big attribute that I would say about myself too. Like, I know I'm not going to quit, like, unless it makes sense to, but if it's like something where it makes sense to keep going, like it's not even a question. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I know for a fact I will see it through. It's never been something I've had any issues with.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen in my time in the industry, I've seen a lot of people come and go, and like I'm still here, and some of them are surprised.
Well, Matt, man, you're the world's most interesting accountant. There, I said it. I have to buy you a mug.
The bar is really high, I'm sure.
Cool, man. Well, thank you so much, guys. His social media linked in the description. Thanks again, Matt, and that was a great interview. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.